Game podcast.
We are here.
Getting into the nitty gritty of what is going on right now.
What's happening?
Especially as we begin to transition into the fall and winter. COVID's still here.
Yep, we're moving into our new normal.
Got to talk about the new normal today.
Got to talk about the new normal today. We've experienced it for some months, and now we're moving into, we are existing in this new normal.
We are existing in this new normal.
It is on.
Zit. One of the things that I think a lot of people need to hear about is how to navigate being burnt out in your home workspace. Right? Because, traditionally when you're working a 9 to 6 or, 8 to 5 or whatever it is, like you have a set time you come in, you have a set time you leave. Now when you're home, you are starting your day at whatever time your meeting start, whatever time you feel like you need to. And then really you're at home all day, and that doesn't give you a cutoff time like when you're in office and you're going home. Now you just kind of sit until your deliverables are done. And I've talked to a lot of people that have been like, I'm actually working more now.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Even before COVID hit, when we had a workforce that worked from home, whether it be once or twice a week, I often heard that from people that they were working longer hours because they were home, because they, it's kind of like a butt in the seat, just kind of sitting there, feeling that, I don't know if it's just a personal sense of feeling that you need to be a little bit more committed because you're home, or if you are realistically getting more things kind of hit at you at once, that you are actually there longer than you should be because of just the volume of work. I think it's a little bit of both, but nevertheless, it doesn't matter whether you're home or physically in an office. You need to really manage your time so that you're not getting burnt out from putting in longer hours than you need to. So a lot of it, I think, is time management. We've experienced that now with COVID. There are lots of kind of juggling responsibilities that people have. They have children at home. They have doctor's appointments. They have a number of things that they would typically have already throughout the day, but now that they're home, they have potentially more people in the house, physically in the house with them. And that can cause for more interruptions and more challenges in sort of needing more breaks and more directed attention to other things. So it's like you're breaking, you're coming back, you're breaking, you're coming back. And that just in itself could cause you to have a longer day. So I think it's important for people to have time management and really recognize what their day is starting to look like, because you don't want that to be your new norm. If you were spending 8 hours and that's what you're required to do based on your job requirements, you don't want to spend 10, 12 hours and miss out on aspects of your personal life and other things that you need to tend to. So I think everybody needs to stop and do a check.
But with your kids at home and like needing to now serve them lunch and fix them breakfast and do all these nitty gritty tasks during the day, like naturally that would extend your day. And also a lot of us don't know what it's looking like. Like, school is starting, but we don't know what it looks like to actually be at home with our kids, needing to help them with their homework, help them with their schoolwork. Just, again, feeding them, 3 times a day and making sure that they're all right while also trying to navigate working. Like, that's a brand new paradigm that we just have not experienced.
Right, and I think that, it's given the nuance and the changes in the dynamics of the day, your day is naturally going to extend a bit more, out to, if you stopped at 5 o'clock, it may extend to 7, 8, 9 o'clock because you're juggling responsibilities. But that shouldn't mean that you're actually spending more time at work. That means that you're accounting for flexibility in your day, so that you're still actually doing your 8-hour day or 9-hour day or whatever it is. You're still doing it, but you're now doing it a little differently, adding flexibility in it because you have to tend to your children and other responsibilities. So that's one group of people. But we're also talking about the people who are now spending extra time and extra hours just because they're home. They may not have the new dynamic of having children at home and other responsibilities. Some people, like I said, I've experienced even before COVID, even for myself, where I felt the need to work longer hours because I was home. And I don't know, something about not having your peers around, people to talk to, the office dynamic, it may just kind of make you concentrate a little bit more on the tasks that you're doing, where 5 o'clock turns into 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. And from just working like that and feeling a sense of responsibility that might be different from what you felt in the office, you have to check yourself, because that will become your new normal.
A big piece of that, though, is the employer also, being able to communicate and articulate that to their staff. Like, understanding that because we're in a new environment that a lot of people, aren't accustomed to with organizing their time and managing their kids and all the different nuances now they're dealing with their home life. With whether their parents are there, they got their kids, friends over, whatever. Like, it's important for employers to now put that into their SOPs and put that into their manuals and put that into the way they communicate with their staff to say, hey, we understand that this is where the world is now.
Right.
And it's important for you all to know that we have your back.
Right.
We understand that every single one of us are in this together. And so we need to have open lines of communication to ensure that we are all hitting our deliverables, but everyone is not getting burnt out and not stressing themselves out. And if you need help or assistance from us, or you need more flexibility, let's talk about that. What does flexibility look like in your home environment right now, so that we can make sure that our culture and the way that we work collectively is on par with what everyone needs, whether that's changing meeting times, ensuring that if we are having check-ins, they're at the same time.
Right.
And if we do need to push, we aren't making sure that the same way you create a culture within your workplace, your physical workplace, now creating a culture within your virtual workplace that everyone understands, that's with open lines of communication, so that it is much easier on your staff members to ensure that everyone is progressing forward during this difficult time.
And you said something I think was really important. We're now moving into fall. So we've had a transition that started about March for most organizations through the summer. Now we're moving into fall. So we've had a number of months to kind of experience this remote workforce, experience the flexibility and the changes and the dynamics that it's brought upon people and organizations. So now is the time for leaders to really be thinking about how to foster that culture that you're talking about. So we had the kind of, we're winging it, trying to figure it out in the past couple of months. And I think we're at a point where we have now established a new normalcy that needs a little bit more structure. So putting a little bit more structure would look like, okay, you need flexibility in your day. You being everybody, not singling certain people out. This is something that's needed, because beyond the fact that people need the time for, tending to their kids and things like that, people are stressed out. People are in mental duress. People are challenged just from the volume of data and information that's out there about death and sicknesses and all the things that are happening with the pandemic, with racial inequality. All of that is hitting people at once. So I think it's an organization's responsibility not only to foster a different culture that has flexibility and leave and new dynamics for their day, but also for everybody who's experiencing the newness of the norm that we now have, and we don't know when it's going to end. So we need to be establishing what that looks like for people right now. And that shouldn't mean that you're requiring people to do 12-hour days now. Actually, what you should be doing from an organizational perspective is telling people you support them and giving them the opportunity and the flexibility to do the things that they need to do with some constraints. I'm not saying that an organization needs to develop a brand new leave policy or a brand new formal benefits package that includes X, Y, and Z. That I think would be a good idea longer term. But right now, I support you. You need time. If you need a break, if you need extended lunch, whatever it is that you need, you know what you need to do in the day. If a manager's responsibility is, let's check in on what needs to be done. Let's check in on what needs to be done for the week. All right, so we know all these things need to be accomplished in a week. Let's work and do it the way we need to, given the dynamic that we're in right now. That doesn't mean that you sit at your desk for 8 hours and I'm checking in on you every hour to see if you're doing your work. That means you have 5 days to get X amount of things done. Let's work together to get that done.
Absolutely.
Let's change how we do that.
One of the things that I believe is probably adversely affecting people is when they have managers and supervisors that aren't good leaders that are now saying, hey, you're at home all day, you should be able to answer my call, or
absolutely,
you should be able to do X, Y, and Z in this amount of time, and not creating that openness that people and that flexibility that people need, because again, everyone doesn't have kids at home, everyone doesn't have constraints, right? Like, I know for me personally as an employer, I don't have kids, I don't have really any other responsibility. So, I could easily be like, hey, going to my staff members like, hey, I know you don't have kids, or hey, I know X, Y, and Z, like, why you not answering the phone? I need you on right now. I need you to come to this event right now. I need you to do X, Y, and Z, or we're volunteering with kids. Like, you should be able to change your schedule tomorrow and just pull up, and it's important for, again, those open lines of communication and for employees and staff members to be able to have those conversations. But it's not, even though they should be comfortable opening up like that, the onus should not be on them. It absolutely shouldn't. Has to be on the employers and the supervisors and the managers to come from a top-down approach to say, hey, we're with you and we need to have flexibility.
And in absence of that, one of the reasons why those managers are micromanaging or poorly managing people is because their leadership sucks, so they suck. So they don't know how to manage that better. And when I say that, I mean, it's just like you said, it starts from the top. So if the leadership hasn't said, this is how we're gonna lead this organization. We're dealing with X, Y, and Z. We are going to be flexible in how we lead this culture and lead this organization to a better environment and a better place and getting things done and executing the mission of our organization. We're still going to do all that. But this is now how we need to do it. That needs to sometimes be directed and designated to managers. This is how you need to manage your people, your staff. And this is how you need to behave in that way. In absence of that, people fall to some of their human instincts. I need to know what you're doing. I need to know when you're doing it. I need you to clock in. I need you to tell me this. I need you to tell me, oh, by the way, you don't have kids, so where have you been? That is just nonsense. You treating people like that, and you expect people to produce and produce well and to meet their deadlines. That is not conducive to a positive workplace where people are productive. So it starts from the top. You're absolutely right. For those managers to be good managers and to be able to shift and change and move in this culture in a way that's conducive for productivity, because that's the bottom line. We want people to work. I always say that. We want people to work. So if you want people to work, that's the bottom line. If you need and want them to work, you have to create an environment where they can do that and they can do that well. And I don't know too many people that can be successful with the pressures of micromanagement and uncertainty and negativity and all these different behaviors that are not conducive to people working. But it starts from the leadership. The leadership has to direct the culture in that way and show people that they are walking the talk and talking the walk. Like, they have to do a little bit of both. They can't just have people think that they, have people read their minds. They have to actually articulate it and say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And here's the expectation around that. So that has to happen.
And in those situations where, I guess, the leadership isn't strong, or the corporate governance isn't structured in a way where it is very top down and flexible, how can employees and staff members really set those expectations for themselves and manage it? Because let's be frank, the job market isn't just open right now. It isn't just easy to just be like, all right, you know what, my workplace is difficult right now, or my manager supervisor doesn't get it, or there's not enough flexibility, I'm gonna roll out. Like, it's a very limited job market right now, but it's important for people to understand how they can set those expectations right now, especially before we get far into the school year, and they're able to navigate that, because otherwise a lot of people are going to be stuck.
One of the things that I truly believe, and I've lived it, is taking responsibility for your career. It is yours. It is not your managers to navigate for you. It is not for your leadership to navigate for you.
It's easy to say, but a lot of people
don't
get that. A lot of people don't get that, though.
I understand that they don't get it. But let's start with the truth of that statement, right?
Yeah.
The truth and the fact of the matter is, when you take a job, when you are working through your career, it is yours. Yeah. Nobody has to invest in you. It is your organization's responsibility to take care of its people globally in a number of different ways.
We want our organization to invest in us.
However, your career is yours. But you're right. A lot of people don't know what that means. A lot of people don't understand that. A lot of times they don't know where to start. I believe in confrontation in the workplace, and people do. Absolutely, and people think about that in a negative way. But I believe you have to confront a situation to get an outcome. You cannot be silent and just hope and wish and dream.
Tell them again.
Tell them
again. You got to be confrontational.
You have to. And I know it's scary and it's stressful and it's all these feelings that go along with it.
But very often what you'll find is when you push confrontation forward in the workplace, that your manager or supervisor or the person you're pushing it on will then draw back. Right? Like they'll naturally draw back because that expectation isn't there. Right? And they're not used to it.
They're not used to it. So it's almost like you always have to think about it like the shock of it is where that's where the human lives, right? That's where the human lives. So when you go to your manager, they are shocked that you have confronted them about something. And we're not talking about, I think when people think about confrontation, they think about yelling and this.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about professional conversations
being assertive
that articulate
and bringing
up
a problem.
Right. Very pointedly.
Very pointedly.
And these are the facts.
Yep.
These are the facts.
And a lot of managers are people you would think people would be accustomed to that by now, because we try to have truth and honesty in the workplace, but
that's not the case.
It's not the case.
It's not the case. These open door policies are
right.
fake.
It's not the case. So the best way to do that is to confront it. And now, like you said, given that we're moving into fall, we have this new normal. People know now what they need from an. And you're right. The job market is not one that we're not in a state where people would just quit and just go find a job tomorrow. In some industries, maybe. But what you need to do is remix your environment. And how do you do that? You can't wait for your manager and your leadership to do it. We want them to set a different precedent and set a different tone, given everything that's going on. But it's really on you to articulate what your new needs are. So if you need a different day, a different hour cadence in your day and flexibility in your day, if you need time off every Friday now, if you need to work in a different dynamic, if you need your management to interact with you in a different way, you have to tell them. You have to tell them. One of the things I've experienced just in my career, every job that I've had, I think every job that I had, maybe not in my early years, I'd say like when I was 18, 19, 20, but after that, every job that I've had, I have felt like it was my responsibility to manage my manager. Not just entitled, not just from something I read. I knew that I had a situation that was very different from everyone else. I had a child, I was in school, I had all these different things going on. So my life was not like everybody else's. That, when I looked to my left and my right, everybody didn't look like me. They didn't have the same experiences that I had and all those kinds of things. So I needed to help my managers understand who I am, what I need, and how I need it. And oh, by the way, I'm a stellar employee too. So I'm gonna get things done. So here's a dynamic of kind of needs that I have that are still going to get you the success that you need in the workplace. I'm still going to do my job and do my job well, but here's some stuff, I need things to be a little bit flexible. So it was my responsibility. I could not expect them to understand my life and understand what I needed and understand what I had going on personally. And really, I didn't necessarily want them to. I didn't need them all in my business. That wasn't the point. I wanted them to understand I'm going to show up, I'm going to do a great job, and this is how I'm going to do it. But here's some considerations here that I need to make you aware of. And you have to articulate that. You, as the employee of a company, have to articulate what you need.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that you had to manage your managers, because over the course of the past 4 years, working in my organization and having two co-founders, we've always hired young because our organization was, startup phase.
Yeah, so and it's a young organization.
So very often, we didn't have the budget to hire, more senior level employees to come in. So we're hiring a lot of younger employees or employees from the community that we serve, in relation to working with kids and doing community events and activism work and things of that nature. So naturally, a lot of the individuals we hired didn't have a lot of professional experience. And what I found is, having three, male supervisors or founders created a dynamic where people had to learn very early how to navigate, dealing with each one of our different leadership styles. And I often found myself, coaching a lot of our staff members up into understanding how to deal with each one of the three of us, because they didn't know. And I'm fortunate that I had probably about 10 different jobs before I started this organization. That I understood how to work with different supervisors, and also talking to you and hearing about your experiences and understanding how you've navigated your life, as a Black woman in the workplace, that helped me become a better leader and a better supervisor for all of our staff members. And again, from our executive assistant that, served all three of us, or any of the other individuals that may have had a problem with one of the three of us, I'm like, look, this is how you should have this conversation with this person, or this is how you should address this conversation with the three of us moving forward, or not have this conversation with just one of us, because you need all three.
Imagine if they had come to the three of you and said, I need to meet with you all the way that we're working is challenging for me for these reasons. Here's a recommendation. This is a new approach that I think we should take. And I know you're saying that a lot of people, especially the young people that work with you all, didn't know to do that because they didn't have a professional experience. I didn't either. Yeah. Nobody told me how to do it either. What I thought through was, what is it that I need? So for me, it was almost like it was a life or death situation. Yeah. I have a son. I'm trying to raise him right. I need life to be great for me and him. So this is what it is. Like, there was no, let me slow walk this. Let me think about it. I was like, all right, this is what I need. That's one of the dynamics, right? And I think that goes back to where you come from and your situation, and you really pushing, because one thing you've always said is you were always running from poverty, right? Yeah, so like even having me young and being with me young, it was always like, I got to get this right, and I need it right now because I can't go back to that. And the other thing was, in doing that, I always thought, I have to try this out. I have to have this conversation. I have to bring this up, because if it doesn't go the way that I think it should, then I need to be planning my exit. Yeah. So it was like, that's why I say it was life or death for me, because it was like, I need to make a decision about whether or not I'm still going to be here, because this is what I need. I can't work the way that I'm working anymore. I simply can't. I don't have the lifestyle that is conducive for, meeting at this time and then this time and all. I didn't have that kind of lifestyle. The lack of structure. Exactly. So I needed to add more structure in a different way, and I needed to bring it up to them to say, this is what I now need and this is what's going on. So I could know. So I would know whether they support it or not, because they could have said, nope, sorry, everybody else does this. Too bad for you, Kenice. You need to figure it out. So I would know, okay, great. I'm going to be here for a few more weeks. I'm going to find me another job. And so I needed to have those answers. And some of that was just me being persistent and me being assertive, but nobody told me to do it. Now, I know for me, it's different, because my driver was my son. My driver was my son. My driver was my life. My driver was you. So I had to make decisions for us. It was always my mindset was, I have to make decisions for us. Now, somebody else might live in a different kind of lifestyle, so they might not have that sense of urgency and that fire underneath of them to say, I need to be a little disruptive because I have some different needs. But it shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter whether you have a child or a sick family member, or you need a different financial situation. You need to have that fire in you that says, this is about me. This is my job. This is my life. I'm making money here, and this organization has a responsibility to me, just like I have a responsibility to them. It's not the end all be all. I think very often, especially for younger professionals, it's like this scary sense of like, it's like a scary sense of the unknown. Yeah, and they feel like they're in a box. Like I've talked to so many young people that have really felt like, when like if this doesn't work, I don't know what to do next. Right, I'm in a box. Like I don't know. I can't say anything, because then what's going to happen? What's going to happen is a change will come. But either a change that you make, or a change that they make. But that's why by investing in one's own professional development is so important. Reading so many of these books, watching these podcasts is important, because what you'll learn from much older professionals, especially like hearing just from you right now and me right now, like what younger professionals will learn is that, like, it's important to do that. And so many people have done it before and have gotten through it. And until you do it, you will not progress. Yeah. You will continue to stagnate, be in the same position. Even if you stay at your same place for a few years, you will stagnate yourself professionally until you actually do lean in. Well, there's something, I don't remember. I wish I could remember the psychologist that I listened to this podcast that talked about resiliency. Mm-hmm. And when we hear that word, it's like, okay, I fall down, I get back up. But really in the workplace, in everything that you do, being able to think through being resilient, this is not going to be the end all be all for you. You just said it. This is not the end of the world. There's another job, there's another opportunity. You might not like what they say. They may say no. They may have some adverse comment that's going to make you feel some kind of way, but you will persevere. You will get up and you will try again someplace else, and you will get through to someone else. You can't let that stop you. But sometimes you have to build up those resiliencies along the way. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is as you're navigating through the workplace, when you are asking for something different that no one else has, or a different flexibility arrangement, you better make sure that you're doing all the right things, in getting your job accomplished. The slackers don't prevail. So you have to also make sure. Be stellar.
stellar. Like you said, you had these expectations, you had these conversations, but you were stellar.
Yeah.
And that is also very key and very important.
Yep.
Very important, very important. But one of the other things I think that a lot of young people don't realize is power in numbers.
Yeah.
Right? And very often in workplaces, you'll have a lot of employees and a lot of staff members that feel the same way, and they have these conversations with one another, and like they'll go out for drinks or happy hour after the workplace and talk about their manager or the supervisor because they feel the same way, but they won't speak up together. Right. And it's very important for people to understand, like, it takes a village to really see progress. Yep. Like in multiple facets of life, but specifically in the workplace, right? And
absolutely.
Like you have to have each other's back, and you all have to be able to bring issues together collectively. And understand the power in numbers. Yeah, and
the notion of it takes a village, we think about that in the context of family and rearing children and the family dynamic and making sure that people have what they need and being supportive. But there is a truism to the village that you need at work. And it's a truism there that you need your village at work. And I have been in so many workplaces, like you just mentioned, where lunchtime, everybody's sitting at the table and they're talking about, oh, this manager this and we need that, and nobody speaks up. Nope. They just sit and commiserate and talk about it, and then that's it, and that becomes the norm every single day. I worked in a place where when I would walk to the cafeteria and I would see someone I would know, and we greet each other, they would say, look, there's a lunch crew over there. They're over there talking about how this place sucks, and they're talking about this, and that group became the lunch group. And every time somebody else new came into the organization and they were sitting at their table, they would be like, look, they got them. They got the lunch crew. So that became, seriously, so it became the lunch crew was this group of people that talked about why this organization sucked, how every manager was awful, how they didn't get the things that they needed, and they talked about it at that table, and that was it. And with that became...
So there was no progress.
There was no progress. There was
bringing
no
it to leadership.
Absolutely not. There was none of that. They just sat there and they talked about it. They were the gossip crew. And really there was likely some validity to some of the things that they were saying, but they weren't going about it in a way to make any movement or shift change and cause change. What it became was, like you said, the gossip crew. It became these people just sit and they gossip and they talk about people and they talk about things, but they really it came from a place. It came from a place of wanting something to be different and wanting change to happen, but they didn't speak up. So it's important to have constructive conversations with people in a way that causes movement. And when I think about my village, because I can certainly say I've had a village along the way. There were people that I grabbed hold of as mentors in different environments, as peers that had qualities that I liked or things that I saw that they did well and I wanted to understand. And in pulling different pieces from people, it helped me understand what and how to craft the message on things that I needed. So my village was, let me see who's doing things right here. Let me see who is modeling behaviors that I want to have. And let me see how they were able to navigate and be successful, especially if they look like me, which was very, very far and few. But the few that did, I wanted to understand, how did they get to the levels that they were at? And how did they command a room where everybody looked at them and understood what they were saying and didn't go, oh, there's that black person, what are they going to say? Like, I really kind of adopted people along the way, and they became my village.
And that's completely different. Well, I wouldn't say it's completely different, but that's a whole nother
part of the village
what it means to have a village. And very often we think of the masses, or like a multitude of us coming together to fight for a cause or to collectively support one another. Right. But also what it means it takes a village is being able to personally utilize the village around you and the resources around you and the different people around you to help progress your goals and your ideology of what success looks like for you.
Because you'll find sometimes you're not able to. Sometimes you might only have the lunchroom crew. You might only have those people to talk to, and they might not be interested in going forward to the leadership in masses to make some kind of change.
It's important to grab and create your village too. You have to create your own village.
And so in absence of that, that's what you grab pieces.
If there's somewhere you want to go, right, and there's no one in a leadership position that you see or you feel like you can talk to, go to your HR director. Like, hey, I want to understand how someone in my position can move up to this position and what that will look like in our organization. Or like you just said, seeing someone who commands the room or speaks a certain way and going to talk to them, even if you don't have a relationship with them. Because what people don't often understand in the workplace is, when people hit certain levels of success, typically, not always, but typically, they want to help groom someone under them.
Yeah.
Like this idea of mentorship is a part of human nature, and that's wanting to help, someone. And it could be like pure altruism, like we want to help someone, or it could be we want to stroke our own ego, like we're handing it down. But regardless, utilizing that to your advantage and using it to push your goals forward.
Yeah, and I have a great example of that from a personal perspective in establishing and having a village. I worked in an organization where I was up for promotion. So we had a promotion cycle. I was up for promotion, and they said, okay, well, here's some things that you need to do to meet the expectations of promotion. So when the time came, I had met all the expectations.
You said you hadn't, or you had?
I had not.
Okay.
So the time came, I had met one of the expectations to get a certification. So they said, you know what? You've done everything else except this one thing. We will give you the opportunity for an out-of-cycle promotion, which meant 6 more months, do that one thing, meet that certification requirement, and you'll have the opportunity for promotion. It was virtually guaranteed. I just needed to do this one thing. And when the time came, I did it. 6 months. I'm excited. I go to HR. Guess what? Look what I did. I know I'm getting promoted. They're like, no, we had a change. We decided that we're not going to grant any out of cycle promotion.
Yeah, I feel like I remember you telling me about this.
Okay. Yeah. And so they said no. So because I had a village, because I had all of these people I talked to, networked, I had great relationships in human resources. I had great relationships in ethics. I had in the ethics department. I had great relationships in
back to the
leadership, management. Yeah, I had all these great relationships. I was like, this is interesting. So I started having conversations with people. I was really frustrated about it. I was accepting of it because it gave me, human resources gave me pretty much what I thought was a solid explanation, the money in the budget, blah, blah, blah. Some things have changed. And that's what happens in private industry sometimes. The money is there. That's why it's important to follow the money and know what's happening, because things can be promised to you and then things can change because of the dynamics of funding and budget and things that happen. So I was accepting of it. I didn't like it. I was upset about it. But I started having conversations like, wow, I worked so hard. I had these great mentors. I had these great relationships. I'm talking to people. They're like, wait. That's not true. Someone has gotten promoted in this 6 months. It wasn't you. And they don't look like you. But somebody got promoted. And I was like, what? This can't possibly be true. Because I believed in this organization. And it's telling me the truth. It has to be telling me the truth. So I said, well, I know how to write ethics. I know how to get an investigation going. So I did that. So I wrote ethics and I said, you know what? Here's the email. Here's the information that they gave me. They told me if I did this, this is the outcome. It didn't happen. They said because of these reasons, please investigate and find out. Because I was told there's someone in this department. And the reason why I was told that, I didn't have the lunchroom gossip counter or the gossip crew. I had people that cared about business, that cared about me, that cared about my professional growth, and knew that I was working hard, and knew that I was a stellar employee. So they're like, wait, this isn't right. Let me just tell her this, and she can do with it as she wishes, but I don't think this is right. Did an investigation. I was promoted in a week. Why was I promoted in a week? Because they had given a promotion to somebody else who had the same requirement to meet. They just chose to promote them and not me. So if I hadn't filed an ethics investigation, and if I hadn't advocated for myself, it never would have happened. I couldn't expect my manager to do that for me. I told my manager in passing just to say, this is unfair, this isn't right. And they're like, oh, I work here too, just like you. I don't know why this happened. This is unfortunate, but maybe next year. So I'm like, no, not next year. I need an answer. This organization is accountable to me, like I'm accountable to them. They expect me to work and produce every day. I expect an answer to understand how this happened and what if this is the truth or not. Found out it was the truth. I literally was promoted in a week. It was like it never happened. Sorry about that, Kenice. This won't happen again. But that was because I advocated for myself. Nobody told me to do that. Nobody told me to reach out to ethics. That was me saying, this is life or death for me. I am trying to be successful. I'm working hard to get promoted so I can have more money so I can support us. So you have to do that. It's important to do that. And that's what the village will do for you.
I would also say that's a form of activism, and how, we see now in the past 10, 15 years how activism has really changed in the workplace, as we've seen more social justice issues being pushed, and, women, black people, other minority groups, all fighting for their rights, across the spectrum.
Yep.
But specifically, like, in the workplace, how we're seeing, like, it's important to speak up. And activism has really changed over, the past few decades. And now is the time for people, specifically in their workplace, to take advantage of that.
It is.
And to be confrontational in a respectful and articulate way. And to use the systems that are there to help them push it forward. And if it's not, exit. But activism has changed.
Yeah, it has. It has. And I think about a statement my brother said earlier. Sometimes people think right now, I think back in the day when they thought about activism, they thought about protesting. And I'd say everybody doesn't feel protesting. Everybody doesn't have a burning desire to go out and protest. But right now, people are so unsettled. They want to do something. Maybe it's not protesting, every day or whenever. Maybe it's finding a different way to advocate for the social injustice that's happening today. And one of the things my brother said, which I thought was so important, and just reminded me of the power of the pen. He's like, I'm an activist from my chair. I'm an activist from my seat. He didn't say I'm not going to go out and protest, but he said I'm an activist. Because right now, what he did was he moved to an organization that supported diversity, inclusion, is completely vocally against racial inequality, is active in pursuing equality for all people, especially Black people that are impoverished in this country and are suffering under the hands of social injustice and in need of reform. But he said, I'm going to be an activist from my chair, which meant I'm going to write whomever I need to write so that my voice can be heard. So when it comes to all the different victims that have been killed, we've seen in social media so many instances where we're seeing, write your congressman, write the chief of police, write the attorney general, write all these people, and we have their names, we have their phone numbers, we have their addresses.
Putting that information
is a new
out
movement.
Into the public, it is
we have petitions.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. So
it's beautiful.
So the point is, everybody doesn't have to protest.
Yeah.
You can protest and write, but if you are in a position where you want to do something, the something doesn't have to be going out in the streets and protesting. You can be an activist from your chair.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a profound statement, because the power of the pen is just it's a magnificent way to have your voice heard. It will never get old. Writing and articulating what you want and being vocal about what you need, and when it comes to some of the social reforms that we need, doing that is activating yourself and being an activist from an individual perspective. So that has changed, where there's so many different avenues to be an activist. And back to your point, for me, when I look back on my life, I was just, I felt like I was just doing stuff.
You've been an activist.
I was doing stuff.
You've technically been an activist in the workplace. You've created avenues and opened up doors for countless women and Black people in general, and all the different corporate entities that you've worked at, because you've been willing to write ethics and challenge, statements that your manager and supervisor have said to you, or, push back on different ways that they have treated people or have created structures. And it's super important for all of us, right, specifically in this time, to understand what we're doing is enough. What we're doing is a form of activism,
absolutely.
right? And it's very easy for social media, for us to be on social media and feel like we aren't doing enough, or feel like because we aren't going to a protest, we aren't standing up for Black rights, or standing up for minority rights, or standing up against police brutality. And that's not the case.
Right.
And we can all do a little more, but we are all doing enough. And it's so important for people to understand that with the current dynamics, and with everything that's going on, with our accessibility of social media, and our ability to write and call our Congress members, and like you said, all the information that's out there, activism has changed tenfold. You know, as I look back to the March on Washington that had just happened, you know, we still saw thousands of people out there, and despite it being COVID, but because it is COVID, because we are in a pandemic, like use your fingers.
Yeah.
You know, use the information
that's presented
to you.
Yeah,
and push.
A lot of people
open
aren't
doors.
out protesting. Some of the people that really do want to protest, a lot. You know, there's several. You know, hundreds of thousands of people that are probably not out there because of COVID. So we're in a pandemic. At the same time that we're at, you know, maximum frustration for everything that's going on from the racial tension. And so, you know, people are frustrated, unsettled, unhappy, tired, depressed, all kinds of things. And they're trying to figure out how can they invoke change. And the pandemic has caused us to be more stationary and at home more than we ever would be, but we still have the power of the pen, and we still have the telephone, and we still have ways that our voices can be heard, and we should just keep doing it. But you're right, we're doing enough.
One of the important things, and this kind of goes back to a lot of the points that you made about, you know, standing up in the workplace and activism in the workplace, is employees now have the power to challenge their corporate entities and their companies to do more. Right? Like we often hear how companies and corporations don't pay taxes, especially like the really big ones. Like they don't pay taxes, and you know, they have all these loopholes and things of that nature. And a lot of that's true. But we also have the power, again, coming back to the village and coming back to the collectivity, like we have the power to push these entities to donate more to causes that we care about, to stand up and say no to things that aren't right, right? And like we're beginning to see that. And until we understand individually the power that we have in control of our lives and in control of what our workplace and looks like and what our company does, we will never really understand the power we possess and we hold. And we've seen examples of that, right? Like we've seen how so many companies have responded to the BLM movement and to activism and to police brutality. And even though, you know, some corporations may be doing it because it's a fad and because they feel like they need you to look good, it's still on us as employees that care to push back and make them do more. And we've seen that, right? Like we've seen now finally NBA players protest and make the NBA cancel 2-3 days of playoff games. Even though the playoffs came back, they still canceled that. Right? Let's understand it. So, like celebrities and
that's a business. The NBA is a business.
And these professional athletes, they're employees. They are employed. They are collecting checks from these associations they're a part of. Right? Or we can look at, you know, another example with The Rock and him delaying, you know, his shoe launch because of the killing of Jacob Blake, right? And to protest that, right? And I'm sure he had a big part of pushing Under Armour to do that. Right? And so understanding, especially for professional athletes now and these celebrities now, that, you know, especially as the black community, you know, us having, you know, a $1.3 trillion buying power, we gonna stand behind you. And now we're seeing
we are watching
an unprecedented amount of white allies right beside us, locking arms. So if we have 1.3 trillion in buying power, and we add, you know, other minority races and other people of color, and then also our white allies in terms of our buying power, we're gonna get behind you. You know, if you're an athlete, we're gonna get behind you. And so it's important for us all to individually understand the power we have in activism and what that looks like for us individually. And I really want to continue to push these professional athletes and these celebrities to do more.
And the other thing about, like you said, you made a really great point, that they're employees. They are employees of a business, but they're also role models. So, you know, when you decide to step into the spotlight, when you decide to be in the limelight, you have a responsibility whether you want it to be there or not. You become an instant role model. And now with social media and so many platforms to see what people are doing, everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. They're watching every move that you make. And, you know, the biggest thing right now is silence appears to be complicit. If you are silent, you are complicit with what's going on. So it is your responsibility to be vocal. It's an organization's responsibility to be vocal. So one of the things that you said that made me think about how so many organizations are They're putting statements out on their websites. They are, very, very supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're vocal in it. But then there's several organizations that are silent. They're saying absolutely nothing. And if you are an employee of their organization and that makes you uncomfortable, do something. Say something. Write your leader. Talk to your leader. Call them up. They're home. They're not in the office. Call them up. They are home. So find a way to get to them and say, this is unacceptable. I need to see that you are supportive of me, and not just me as a Black woman or as a Black person, supportive of everybody in this company that is fed up with what we're seeing, because it's not just Black people are experiencing it, but white people, all other races and ethnicities are, like you said, they're locking arms too and saying, what is happening here? We can't stand for this. And if they see that these companies are making a stance in a position, then that gives them that charges them up to activate too. They need the support of the masses to be able to do it. So everything that you're saying about how the NBA is responding and how the players are responding, everybody's watching. Yeah. So that's activating them too. So these companies that are silent, hold them accountable for it.
And I'm happy you said that, because a very important thing that we also have to realize is, when we see someone standing up in the workplace, and when we see someone standing up to things that we believe are wrong, we have a duty and responsibility to our friends, our coworkers, and other people that's in the fight with us to support them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't leave people astray. And when I think about that and everything you just said, I recently did a executive certification a couple months ago that I completed, and I realized I actually need to respond to this now that I'm saying this out loud, because one of the individuals in my certification course, white guy, he was super brilliant, and he sent this really long email to the program manager or the dean or whoever was in charge of that program, and was like, hey, now that given everything that's going on, I really want to speak up and say some of these things, like how I think there needs to be more inclusivity in the courses. We need to have more diversity in the teachers that are talking about, and specifically in this space, because this is a social impact thing. Like, I believe that we need to talk about how social impact is dominated by white people, and how we need to create more ways of inclusivity for Black individuals to have their voices heard.
Please
in the
let
social
them know your mother's available. Your mother's available.
Philanthropic space, right? And it was a really long email, and I'm not the best at responding emails, but we have to, I was CC'd in this, a couple of us were CC'd. I need to respond.
I'm glad it was brought up. And let them know your mother is available to have those conversations too. I would love to. We need to have more forms. He's right. He is right. The world is not just white. There are so many different, races, ethnicities, experiences that people have, and it needs to be representative of what the world actually looks like. And so I'm glad he brought it up, and I'm glad that reminded you to respond, because I'm sure he's right, because you're responding to it now, so I think he's right.
Yeah, he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I just, at the time, I was like, gosh, I got to come back with some fire too, and have more tangible examples of because he hit examples and talked about specific facets. Me, I'm kind of, I'd be paying attention, but also working and doing that stuff. So I'm like, gosh, I don't remember anybody's name. I would have needed to do more research to respond as articulately as him.
But I think one of
the
things
thank you, I appreciate you.
But one of the things that you can talk about, is and you can use me as an example. There's leadership has all different colors, ages, ethnicities. I think about, with myself, when I moved into the executive ranks in the federal government, I remember. So when I started in that job, I started in a class. It was called the Candidate Development Program, and it's an executive class that some federal agencies have. You can certainly apply and become an executive, or you can go through these programs and become an executive. So there were 18 people, and I was one of 3 Black people in the class, and I'm almost certain that if I wasn't the youngest, I was probably one of 2 that was in my same age group. I'm almost certain that I was the youngest person in that.
How old were you at the time?
When I started it, I was maybe 30. It was 2014. Is that 37? When I started the program, and so when I finally finished it, I was 40.
Federal government
which is
executive.
When you
Boom! Look at that! Look at that!
I'm saying that to say though, leadership, like he said, leadership. But I'm saying that to say leadership is not just older white men, which is what we often see. It's young black women too, because at that age, I was considered young for moving into an executive position in the federal government. So it's things like that. Like that's a different set of experiences that people don't know unless it's told to them or they see it. So I lived in my little world over here, and these things were happening to me, and I were a part of them, and I was, maybe, breaking barriers and opening doors for myself. But if I don't tell people, and if I don't show people that, they don't know that it exists. So he's right. There's so much more to leadership and being inclusive and starting new businesses and things like that don't look like what we know is the older white male figure that we've seen for many generations. It doesn't look like that anymore. No. So it doesn't show up that way. So I'm glad you remembered. Yeah, I'm glad you were reminded about that.
It's unfortunate because a lot of companies still don't know how to respond to that. Yeah. Because they are older white males.
Yes.
And so it's like, what do we do? Like, how do we?
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. And I think what we'll begin to see over the next year or two is a lot of Black consultants being hired to address these concerns.
Yeah.
Right? Because it isn't just a one streak answer. Yeah. I was talking to one of our funders a couple of months ago, probably around May or June, when a lot of these movements start kicking off after George Floyd's death, and he was saying, his company was a little slower to respond. He runs a really large fund. He was like, they've been a little slower to respond because he wants to get it right. Yeah. Which I commended him for.
That. I do.
Because he said, one of the first suggestions were we just need to go hire Black people. And that's what a lot of companies do.
That is not the answer.
And what he said is, he was like, I don't want it, like, one thing that I really don't want is for it to look like, we're essentially just buying Black people.
And it's not a numbers game. It's not a numbers game.
That comes back to many of these companies are run by older white men, so they don't understand that kind of looks like you're just throwing money at Black people. Here you go. We're going to just buy a couple Black people to make ourselves look more diverse, make ourselves look more inclusive, and that's not the answer.
That's not the answer.
So what I really think is going to happen over the insinuating months is that we'll see a lot of Black consultants and a lot of Black individuals that have been executives like yourself being hired by some of these large firms to create more inclusivity and to really change what the workplace looks like and how to create these structures and this openness and these open channels that are much, much needed. Yeah. They're needed. And you can't look to yourself that has perpetuated a problem to help fix the problem. Yep. Like you need additional opinions, and you can't be too prideful to ask for help. Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
No, I think that totally makes sense. And companies have even before the height of where we are with racial tension. That's what companies have traditionally done. We don't have we need a Black person. Let's go hire a Black person, and it just becomes a numbers game. I remember working someplace, and it was said that when I look at my leadership team, they didn't say this verbatim, but it was when I look at my leadership team and I see Black faces, what was said was, now that I can look around at my leadership team and it looks more diverse, I feel good. But really, in essence, what they were saying was, I have 3 Black leaders. Go me, go my company.
Myself a pat on the back.
That's really what some organizations believe, and that's not it. That absolutely is not it. So I applaud and commend them for wanting to be thoughtful and intentional about getting that right and what right means to them. I think they're still trying to figure that out, but it's not just going to hire Black people.
What are some of the things you think should be done?
I think that, it goes back to one of the things that I've said was a challenge in my own career when we think about where we recruit and how we, a lot of times, one of the reasons why you can't get great Black leaders is because you're not going to where great Black leaders are. And sometimes, when us as great Black leaders apply, we may not look or fit the part in the same way our white counterparts are, for a number of different reasons. If you put the resumes side by side, they look different, but that's good. It's you have to embrace the differences in someone's journey
and challenging yourself,
and if they have
to open up to
and
that.
It's really about you need to unpack whether or not they actually have the qualifications that you're looking for, and the only way you're going to do that is to start the interview, to start the process. So if you're going about it the same way that you always have, you're going to get the same thing.
So one of the responses technically could be, we're going to spend a little bit longer. If we typically try to turn around a timetable of hiring an executive, let's say it's six weeks, we're actually going to, and we look at 20 candidates, typically we're actually going to expand that to 30 candidates in a couple more weeks. I think instilling things like that, even if it isn't as black and white,
changing
but
in the dynamics.
But like saying, we'll take more time to do this. Like, we're not going to be in such a rush, or we'll bring in an additional third party firm or consultant to help us, actually look at things and say, and also have open conversations about, like, this is the typical or the type of resume or person that we typically hire. What are some areas we can kind of switch that up with?
Yeah.
And asking, like, what could that look like?
Yep.
Right? Like,
Yep.
what could that look like? And we don't challenge ourselves. Well, these leaders don't challenge themselves enough to do that.
Yeah.
And those things are super important, because whether they understand it or not, is just because you hire 2 black people and now you want to fit the box, it doesn't mean that the younger black individuals that you hire now feel comfortable having open channels of conversation, right? And like that's a whole nother dynamic that is honestly not addressed.
Yep. And I think when you look at you made a good point about when you look at the applicant pool, before you even do that, when you look at the criteria for when you want to hire 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, when you need to really go back to these job descriptions. If you want to be able to hire people from all different races, ethnicities, backgrounds, and you want to add some robustness in your hiring pool and your leadership, you have to look at what you're asking for too. So if you're looking for someone who is just technically competent and has the capabilities to do the job, then you're going to get the same kind of people applying every day or every time. If you look at things like different actual leadership competencies, different soft skills that have nothing to do with the job. So emotional intelligence, things like effectiveness in leading people. Do they have human resources capabilities as well? All of these things are leadership traits that you need. Gone are the days when you just need somebody that's technically savvy to do a particular job. You need people that have empathy, have great personalities, have all kinds of skills. How do you find that? No, you can't put in your job description, I want somebody with a great personality. No, but there are different ways that you can craft the message. And it goes back to what you said, hiring these different types of consulting firms and different people that know what that kind of looks like, so you can get the right kind of people and diverseness in your candidate pool. But you have to change your requirements and your needs.
And another component is expanding and restructuring your interview process, right? Like, very often we have these straightforward cookie cutter like interview questions that people go down the line like check. But like asking people, what's your story? What are you passionate about? Understanding and learning
who the person is
and
giving them
super important.
And I think two things like different scenarios, kind of stepping through how they think through solving problems and things like that. It's interesting. So
so would you say and this comes back to, it could be like a component of like ethics, but asking people how they will respond to certain social issues or social dynamics. Like, do you think that's something that's appropriate, or is that something that could create ethical concerns in the interview process?
I think it could create ethical concerns, but that's why you have a partnership with your human resources team. But I think it's important to do that in a way that doesn't get you in trouble. I think you do want to understand how maybe you don't add specificity in the type of issue, but you want to craft a message so when issues arise, such as blah, 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 or maybe some light examples of what that might be, to find out how they would manage through situations. The same way you ask questions about how you deal with difficult employees, providing examples of what difficult means is kind of the way you would do your interview. It's the same kind of leading questions when it comes to social responses to different issues and things like that arise. I think it's important to ask those kind of questions, but you do need to make sure that you're working within, the ethical bounds of the company. But I'll flip that though. So when we talk about organizations having a responsibility to have a more diverse candidate pool and things like that, I can think about on the opposite end of me being in a hiring manager position, when I have made a concerted effort to make sure I'm getting the right candidates for specific jobs. I mean, I've been in positions where I've hired where I've interviewed 50, 60 people for one given job, just because we were really working to try to broaden the candidate pool. And one of the things that I found for myself is, when I structured the interviews where there were, sometimes I would do a panel versus one-on-ones, because I've been in a number of interviews where, where you may have a candidate interviewing 4 people separately, or you have them do a panel where 4 people are together. I'll tell you, I've had so many instances where I was the hiring manager. It was my team, and I brought in a panel of people from my team where there were 4 of us total. I was the only black woman because I was the only black woman, period. And I've had, maybe an older white male, maybe a younger white woman, maybe a middle-aged white male, just because this was the dynamic of the team that I had. And we've had the panel set up where we brought candidates in from every different ethnicity, every different walk of life that we thought would qualify for the job. And when we started asking them questions, they would direct the answers to the older white guy almost every time. So I asked a question of you, and you started answering, and you look that way, because that surely must be the hiring manager. So they're not even addressing me. They don't even know. So a lot of times they wouldn't even know that in that room, I was the person that would make the final decision. I didn't say. We just introduced ourselves and let them know that, this is a joint interview. Here's some information about what the company does, what our division does. So they wouldn't necessarily know who was in the position of hiring. So for us as candidates out here in the job market, I'm saying us as people in general, we have to make sure that we're paying attention to the organizations that we're applying to, and giving everyone the same respect, eye contact, information. We are a business. We are in the business of selling ourselves to that particular company. So we need to address every single person in that room like they have a say in our ability to be hired. So a lot of times when I hear I'm having a tough time finding a job, and I, start asking away about what's happening on the interview, what's this, and I find out things like that because I experienced that. I experienced that so many times I can't even tell you. And I would be so frustrated because I would find this candidate, this person might have been good for this job, but they don't even see me. And I'm the person making the decision. They don't even see me. So I would politely end that interview. You're not it. We're not about to waste everybody's time with more questions when
So you just did the interview?
Yeah. There have been times that I would allow it to go on because I wanted to just verify that I'm seeing what I'm seeing. But I'll tell you, every other person in that room would see it too. They would be, I can't believe they didn't even make eye contact with you. They would see it. And I would sit in different spots. I would try to set it up different ways, and they wouldn't even address me. And even if I was asking the questions directly, they wouldn't address me. So word to the wise for anybody who is in a position where they are wanting to be a part of an organization that may not look like them or maybe different from what they're used to, make sure that you're selling your best self when it comes to interviewing and sharing with them who you are so that they want you to be a part of their organization, because every organization isn't behind the times. There are some that are very progressive and wanting to have an inclusive workforce. So we need to make sure that we help them with it. We need to make sure that they are getting the help they need to hire people that look like us.
That's it. Help them hire us.
To help them hire us.
On that note, that's Color Scheme.
All right.
We're going to end on that. We're going to let the people know exactly what they need to do to get hired during these COVID times.
That's right. Color Scheme.
All right,
we are done.